think we learned that recording in the cloud, yeah, works better. So, okay, folks, hi. Um, Arts West CT is back. We've got a lot of people who left the last meeting inspired and with more to say and talk about and exchange. So we invited Raheem Nelson back, and he's got lots of ideas and lots of really great experience. So I'm Eleanor Slamba, very happy to welcome Raheem Nelson and other area artists to learn and exchange ideas today. And I know you've got your presentation prepared and some stuff to kick us off, Raheem, but first I wanted to just say, you identify as an iPad artist, and I take us back, because I've kind of seen your journey, but for somebody who's just meeting you now, like, where did that start and why did you claim that?
That's a great question. Good. I like that. So I went through a lot of transformations in terms of getting to this point where I'm using the iPad to create artwork. And what that looked like for me was being a comic book artist first, from age 7 through high school, through most of college too. And then expanding my horizons to oil painting and acrylics painting and graphic design while I was in ECA, on Audubon Street, and then SVA, which is the School of Visual Arts in Manhattan, where I went to college for. And getting into digital art, it was Photoshop, a little bit of Illustrator, but I definitely gravitated towards Photoshop more than anything because it's vector based, and was the most similar for me in terms of what I was doing in my cartooning illustration. And then the iPad came out in 2010, and I knew I wanted one, but I thought to myself, all right, what am I really going to use this for in terms of creating? Because if I was going to spend a few $100s on this device, I wanted to make it work for my business. And then I was on YouTube one day and I saw somebody drawing on it, and I had no idea about drawing tablets. I know they have the Wacom tablets and things like that, but I didn't find out about that until after the iPad. And even then, I wasn't really able to acclimate on using a drawing tablet, because I'd have the tablet and then I'd have to look at what's on my screen being created. Whereas with the iPad, I was able to draw directly onto the screen, have instant results. So in 2010, that's when I ended up purchasing one and starting to create my artwork on it. And it was a process. I was very timid at first, whereas I would create my artwork traditionally and then scan it. And then on the iPad, I would probably just color in my comic books, because at first it was kind of clunky, there was no palm rejection. I couldn't rest my palm on the screen. So I kind of had to hover my hand over the screen so I wouldn't make marks with my hand. And the stylus pens were just, okay at the time. But I transitioned into, using those limitations as best as I could. And iPad became my main way of not only creating artwork on a personal level, but also professionally. And there was this big boom in 2013 for my career, where people were seeking me out because I was using this iPad to create artwork, and I ended up doing talks about it and things like that. And I don't really publicize this publicly, but I was a brand ambassador for Apple for about I believe 3 years. I think from 2018 to 2020. And basically we had this arrangement where they would gift me an iPad, and in exchange I would create artwork and then publicize and say, hey, this is what I think of the newest iPads, iPad Pro, whatever the model was. And it ended up just being a great business relationship. I really enjoyed working with them and just creating content for them as well. So the iPad, I think, just opened a lot of doors for me, where I'd be able to create artwork and then email it to a client, put it on Flickr.com, put it on Instagram, right away from the same device. And then, I'd be able to travel with it and things like that too. So yeah, that's was my pathway for the iPad.
Cool. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you've given a lot of thought to best practices and you've been applying them in your own work. So take it away.
All right, great. So I have a write-up here that I'm going to kind of go off of, but it'll also be a free-flowing conversation. And it's going to be about the things that I've learned while being a creative entrepreneur, and just like some things to avoid and things to be mindful of as well. So I'm going to go point by point, and then if any questions come up, we can just get into that. So the first thing I want to just touch on are deposits. And this goes for working with a big client or a small client. You want to make sure you have a contract. You want to make sure you have just everything figured out ahead of time. Because in my experience, being an illustrator, being a cartoonist, there are people that might ask like, hey, can you do a sketch for me, like just for free? So, to kind of like flesh out the ideas. And doing a sketch for a client is fine. Like, you really want to make sure you get some money up front before you do anything. And I always tell my clients, like, that sketch, like, it might seem, you know, small to somebody that's not a trained illustrator, that doesn't really know about the business part of it. But like, that's a part of your process. Like, you want to ask a photographer to like do some test shots without having something in writing. So that was something that I used to do when I was starting out. And then, that person might end up taking that sketch and going to another artist to work with them. So like, you end up losing out. So before anything happens, like, make sure you get that deposit. I usually do 50%. You can do 25% if you like, whatever you're comfortable with. But you got to make sure that, something's in writing, A, and then B, that, the client is willing to pay you half up front or whatever the percentage is, and then the rest when the work is completed. So everybody's just on the same page, and that just makes it so you can build a relationship. So that is point number one. Any questions about that before I move on, Zalika? No questions. Okay, cool. Point two, this is a big one too, revisions. Revisions are like one of the things I dislike most about being a creative entrepreneur, but it is something that comes up. When you're working with somebody, you're getting to know them personally, professionally, they might want something to look a certain way. So when you're creating this relationship with the client, you're just talking out what they expect of you, and then, vice versa. And you want to ask as many questions as possible. So when the revisions do come up, or, they might not come up at all. I've had instances where, I haven't had any revisions. It's kind of rare, it does happen. So as a creative person, you want to just make sure you do the legwork to say like, hey, are you expecting the logo, for instance, to be this color or this size, or maybe have like a little mascot attached to it? Just get them talking it out, because if they're not somebody that draws, for instance, and they're just kind of leaning on you to like flesh out their idea, having them talk about what their expectations are is a really great way to go. And a friend of mine, actually, he'll even like take it one step further, and like, if they have a little bit of drawing experience, have them like do a sketch with you. And I've done that a little bit too, so you can kind of see what their thought process is like. And then by the time you're finished at step one and you're doing that consultation and you're ready to do the drawing and whatever else comes next, you'll have an idea of what they want already, and you're not like doing guesswork, and they're not coming back to you with like a ton of revisions. So that being said, what I try to put in my contracts is like maybe like 3-4 revisions for free that come in terms of the price. And then after that, what I try to do is like half of the hourly rate for minor revisions. And then major revisions is probably going to be like the full rate, because you don't want the client to feel like they can just get away with murder, so to speak, and just have everything revised. Because if you're doing everything as they request it, and then they still want it changed, like, that is considered like a major revision. And that's something they have to be made aware of, like not only in the contract, but verbally too. Like, had an experience with a client, great guy, and he wanted a logo. And I kind of just had to rein him in, because like there were all these major revisions to the logo that I was working on. And we kind of had to just go back and simplify. And I told him, like, all right, like, this is my hourly rate, and the revision is kind of like so severe, like I'm basically taking what we already worked on and not so much scrapping it, but like doing like a huge overhaul. And when that's the case, it's like you're using your time, your resources, your device or whatever, your tools, to create this work for somebody. And say you have like other clients lined up, like you want to make sure you're able to like give everybody the proper attention. And it's all about communication, making sure that they realize, okay, like if I want this level of work, I might be paying double or triple. So they might have to just kind of scale back things so they realize that they can't like, just go crazy with it.
Okay, I have a question now.
Go for it.
So, do you do all of your work based on hourly, or do you just, so say that it is a logo, but so do you have like a design fee for just you doing the job at all? And then also hourly rate or what?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for me, I do a flat rate for the project, which includes those free revisions, like I mentioned. And then if there are additional revisions and they exceed the 3 or 4 free revisions, then I go by hourly. And I think that's a way that I don't scare off the client, because if I'm like charging another huge flat rate for like revisions, I don't even really know what revisions could come up. Then it kind of like sets up a situation where the business relationship is being strained. Like there have been times like when I've been dealing with a client and like I've overcharged them for revisions, and they'll like let me know, like it was a big corporate client and they were basically saying like, all right, we're not paying this much for revisions. So I had to look at what I was doing and say like, okay, like if I do half of my hourly rate for minor revisions, the client is generally more comfortable having that flat rate where they have a few revisions, they have some wiggle room, and if they go over that, okay, it's half of the hourly rate. My hourly rate is like $60 an hour now. So it'd be like 30, for the revisions, and then, just kind of taking it from there. So to answer the question, it's like flat rate plus some free revisions, and then like half of the hourly rate for minor revisions.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I find
Yeah,
as time's gone on, I've been able to estimate more how long things are gonna take me, so I'm more comfortable doing a flat fee. And then if it's quicker, then I get the benefit of that.
Yeah.
But over time, that's just something that kind of comes with the territory. And some clients, don't you find, are more able to articulate really upfront what they want, and others just have to see it first. and
Yeah, absolutely.
Know what they don't want.
Mhm.
Cool.
All right, so the next thing is about expectations. And like I mentioned, when you're working with a client, you are building a relationship, especially if it's a new client. And that's something I try to get out of the way, right off the bat. As a creative, you have certain expectations of the client, them, just articulating things a certain way to the best ability. And, you as the creative person, finding out what the client expects of you in terms of like deadlines, even like when they can contact you, and making sure they realize what your business hours are. Like I had not that many, but a few clients that would like try to contact me about revisions and things like that after hours. And I had to say to them like, hey, like this block is the time when I'm going to be focused on your project. After that, like it has to wait. And if they try to like, you know, exceed that or something, I will either like ignore the email and then like get back to them and say like, hey, like I didn't respond to you because of this. Like this is when I'm working. This is not when I'm working. Be respectful for your time and your boundaries, and setting a precedent with them so that they know, hey, if I contact this person, they're probably not going to get back to me because, they want to be firm in their boundaries as a creative person. So just kind of like getting that out of the way, like you can like put it in the contract if you want, just so they're aware of, what they can expect. And if they have like a hard deadline and they need it at a certain point, like that's fine. But like at the same time, like you don't want to overwork yourself, and you never want to be on call all the time for a client, because it just sets up something that doesn't really feel healthy, in my opinion, where the client always feels they can reach you like, hey, maybe, you want to go out to a restaurant and, just kind of decompress. And then you've got your phone buzzing and your email notifications going off because this client wants to, you to do certain revisions. And, that just, it's just not really a good work-life balance. So that's another thing to think of in terms of expectations.
Okay, cool. I have another question.
Mhm.
Oh man, I kind of lost it. Creating boundary expectations. Oh, do you ever have someone who wants you to do some work for them and you set up a time to talk, but one of you ends up not being available and you're playing phone tag and whatever. And in that situation, do you keep pressing it because you want to get their business, or do you just fall back and let them come to you?
Oh, that's a good one. I like that. I definitely like that. That was something I was just dealing with. It's like a balance. I guess the way I think of it is kind of like dating, actually, where you don't want to come on too strong. And it's all about finding a balance. Like sometimes you might have to put in more work to, rein in that client. I think what I try to do is send out correspondence. If I don't hear anything, wait a few days or something, send out a reminder. And if you don't hear anything after that, leave the ball in their court. In terms of playing phone tag, I try to just leave it up to like a few times, like not too many, and really just holding people accountable. It's like, hey, we were supposed to have a call at 3 p.m. and that didn't work for you. I'm willing to reschedule to this time. If you have to cancel, please let me know. I don't know, like 24 hours in advance. And if you feel like they're really not gonna respect that boundary, you could even say like, okay, like I was giving you a free consultation, but since you missed this meeting, it's gonna be, like a cancel fee. Like, dentists, for instance, have like a cancel fee. So it's something you could, put in as a creative entrepreneur because, your time is valuable. So you don't want to push them too hard. And at the same time, you just want to be respectful of your time and your value. And, just letting them know, like, I understand, like, you're busy, I'm busy as well. Like, if you'd like my business, if you'd like me to work on this project with you, I'm willing to reschedule, but I'm not really willing to reschedule a second time or more than that because I do have other clients that are seeking my business and, stuff like that. Even if it's not necessarily true and people aren't knocking down your door, for instance, like you always want to put out the energy that you have things going on, you have other people seeking your business, because that's attractive to people, that's attractive to clients, if they feel like your time is valuable and you are, penciling them in, so to speak. It's just a relationship that you're building. Like, even if it's a client that is a return customer and they have been reliable in the past and they've had some things come up in their schedule, like, just got to remind them, like, hey, like, I get that your schedule is busy, so is mine.
Mm-hmm.
One thing to just chime in, because I really relate to this one, is if I protect the time for somebody, then I'm gonna want to charge for the time. So I'll just let people know that I'm protecting, I'm protecting this time spot for you to just make it, a valuable thing that they're aware of. And then I usually have some type of research that I could do for that client, so that I'm like Googling like stuff about their project, or like doing some type of discovery or something, where if they need to reschedule, that's fine, but that's going to be another, like, that's a separate period of time, because
Yeah.
with this time that I protected for you, here's what I was able to do for you, so that's just hack too.
Definitely.
Okay. Thank you
Cool.
both.
Yeah, no problem.
you.
All right. Okay, next one. So this is a big one. This one is price. And I have a lot of artist friends, for instance, they price things a certain way. I price things the way I like to price them as well. It's definitely a fine line on pricing things and knowing your value, not overcharging people and not undercharging people. And what I get asked all the time is like, how do you come up with your prices? And for me, it's very simple. I always start with a Google search, like what are illustrators charging in 2021, for instance, like what's the hourly rate, what's the flat rate based on experience. Like I've got probably like over 10 years as a creative entrepreneur. And, you know, I've done certain projects that give me clout. So my rate is going to reflect that. And that's something I always make my clients aware of too. Cause like there are times when I will get pushback about my rate. Oh, that's a bit too much, blah, 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 blah. And then, you know, I don't have any problem breaking down why I charge what I charge. Like for instance, one of my most expensive items is like what I call like the realistic portrait. And this is something that I can probably do one of them in about like 5 to 8 hours, which is probably down from like 10 to 15. So you're paying for the skill that's involved. You're paying for the education. You're paying for the fact that I might have to do research or something to, you know, get the pose right and the anatomy, just like all the skills that I've acquired. And then the jobs I've done in the past kind of like accumulate into what that rate is. And then so there's that to consider. And then there's also like if you get like a big project, like a big contract, like for me, I would consider the Arts and Ideas project that I just had. You know, it's a mural on, yep, on 195 Church Street of essential workers. You know, I can direct people to go check that out. You know, like I was joking with one of my coworkers, like it basically acts like my CV right now, like a physical CV. So if like somebody's kind of like trying to wrangle me out of my price, I'm like, all right, well, go downtown and you'll see what I did. And not even like in an egotistical way, just like I've put hours into this. I command a certain price, and then being confident in my skills to be able to back that up. And that's always backed up with, you know, like the work I've done and then also doing the research and then having that being reflected in my rates. So it's not like, oh, I'm overcharging or undercharging, like it's just right. And then kind of like increasing that as needed. You know, I had a email correspondence today about a talk that I'm going to be doing in Bridgeport. And I was talking to Eleanor about like doing an educator rate and, you know, having certain discounts. Like I'm always willing to like, not budge, but work within a budget as long as like I'm not doing too much. Like that's always something I try to consider. Like I'm willing to work within somebody's budget. And when it comes to my prices, I always look at like having like a corporate rate. Like if they've got a budget specifically for illustration and graphic design, they're going to be paying more. But if it's like a singular client, maybe I'm doing some work for like a family or something, that price is going to be different. Just like with the Arts and Ideas project that I had, they paid a certain rate because they were using it for marketing and branding. They're using it for their social media. And I knew just the kind of reach that they had and that they were able to afford something like that. So that rate would look like this, you know, a family rate would look like that. So it's another thing to consider too. Any questions with that?
No, I just want to say thank you for that because I haven't ever learned to be paid for the value of my skills before. That's
Oh,
not like normal job employee type thing.
right.
So like, wow, that really kind of blew my mind open in a great
Oh,
way.
really? I'm so glad to hear that. And
Yes.
that's honestly going to be its own talk. Like some of these things I'm touching on, it's going to be like they're going to branch off into their own dedicated talk. So like this was something like I had to like learn on my own. And I've got mentors and stuff like that that are also in the industry. And I'd ask them questions like, how do you charge what you charge? And like they would kind of direct me to do the research and they would be transparent and let me know what their pricing structure is. Like this was like never something I learned in art school. And it's like just a huge missing. Like they'll teach you the technical skills and everything and say like, oh, well, you can put together a press release and blah, blah, blah. But like, no, like what happens when you actually get in front of that client and you're on the phone and they're asking you what your rates are and like you have no idea what to say. And then
Yeah.
like you don't want to like put out a figure and they're like, oh, that's well within our budget. And then like you're like well undercharging yourself and you're
Yeah.
like working on hours and like, oh, I'm like getting paid $100 for this. And you know, like everybody deserves to get paid what they're worth and like building that client creative relationship. And you know, just you know, you want them to come back for more business and you want them to come back for more business for the right reasons. You don't want them to come back like, oh, that artist is super cheap and they do great work. Like, no, like that doesn't work for the artist. Like the artist needs to get paid what they're worth. So, you know, I just encourage everybody to do the research. And, you know, I'm always here to be a resource for people as well. And, you know, just realizing that this is the stuff they don't teach you in art school. And as a creative professional, that's, you know, I'm always still learning, you know, like the stuff I share in these workshops, you know, I'm always learning how to, you know, just deliver that information to people and help people and then just apply it in my own practices on a day-to-day.
Yes. Love it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything, Eleanor, before I move on? Oh, good. Okay. So next one. Okay. So this is about contract. And like I mentioned at the start of the talk, having a contract in place as quickly as possible before any work begins is like super important. Free consultation's fine. You can definitely do that before things are in writing, you know, because you are building a relationship with the client. But like I stated, don't do any work without a contract in place. And I would even say having that mindset, even if money isn't being exchanged. Like if you're doing a barter with a client or say like you're doing a podcast with somebody, have that in writing because you don't want it to be like he said, she said, and then it's like a big ordeal and you're like, oh, I wish I put something in writing before and you know now it's a big thing. In my experience, like I had a few early gigs when I was in high school. You know, I've been doing this for a while, you know, professionally. And, you know, I just didn't know any better. And I did some work for somebody, wasn't quite a friend. He was more like somebody I was trying to get into business with. And so I kind of like, I think I did a sketch for him or something. And then the contract didn't really materialize. So this person was able to like get some free work and not pay. And then the same thing kind of goes in hand with like collaborations. Like you want to just make sure everything is just set up in a way where like, yeah, you can build a relationship and be cordial with that person. But like having a paper trail is so important because you could like, even with you're doing business with friends, like just have that contract in place. Like you don't want to get into a situation where like you have a falling out and then suddenly like you lost your best friend. Like just make sure there's a paper trail, make sure you have the necessary conversations they need to have. And in terms of actually putting together a contract, I tend to do my own. I put them in, make them in layman's terms. And I'm doing a lot of research on just what templates look like because I have contracts for videography, illustration, photography, just whatever's in my wheelhouse. And then having spaces for artist signature, client signature, and then emailing that, you know, both parties sign off and then, you know, just getting that taken care of. And then in terms of like correspondence, I always CC myself. Like even if you keep it for your records, like just making it so that they know you're keeping track. And that's like not so like you don't trust the other person. You just want to do these things so that everything can be on the up and up. Like it's better to just be safe than sorry.
Good stuff. My question is, when you make a digital piece of artwork for someone, is it licensed to them? Like, can it be reused by anybody else? Or could you reuse it? Or if you make something for someone, it's just for them. You're never using it for anything else.
That is a great question too. I like that.
I'm gonna
So
pipe in here. Oh, go
yeah,
ahead. I'll go
you
after.
want to go first? You want me to take it first?
Go ahead.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so for me, what I started doing with clients, for logos, for the most part, what they're paying for is a buyout. Like they're using the logo, they have rights to it. For anything else, what I make sure is okay, let's just like maybe a family portrait or memorial portrait, I try not to reuse it for other things because I just don't want it to come off the wrong way. But like general illustration, if I'm doing like a children's book or a time-lapse animation, I try to just say like, hey, like you are purchasing this, but I keep the rights to it. I get to use it for promotional purposes or something like that. Unless I am, now this is going to be another point, but I can get into this now. Unless I sign an NDA. For example, I had a job with Target probably like 2-3 months ago, and I created like pop art illustrations for this campaign that they did. It was like a retreat for Target employees. These pieces I did for them, I cannot share on social media at all because I am under contract not to do so. So I signed the NDA, the non-disclosure agreement. They have the rights to that, and they were paying me for that exclusivity. So that's another thing to, you know, be careful for. Like if you are signing an NDA, like you're not to post any work in progresses, nothing on your portfolio, nothing on your website, because if that gets back to them for any reason, you know, like you're legally going to be in hot water. So an NDA, you know, sometimes that does come up, like especially for corporate clients, bigger clients. I haven't really encountered that for private clients unless they have a business that they're starting. So to answer the question, for the most part, you know, I do retain the rights to the work and I make sure that's in the contract. Logos, I'm probably just going to have the client buy me out, and I might ask if I can use it on the website to promote, but you know, they will have the rights to it. So it depends on the job, but logos are most likely doing a buyout, you know, in terms of you know, the stuff I do.
Okay, cool. Makes sense.
Go ahead.
Great. And Eleanor, you had something to say?
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna mention that you brought up some really good points, and I'm glad you asked about that, Zalika, because I always like to, I mean, my work product is more writing than visual, but I'll still make sure, you know, I'll say in the contract that the work products belong to the client, except when, you know, for purposes of my own work samples and portfolio. So I'll ask, you know, to retain the right to show it as an example of what I can do.
Mhm.
I haven't had anybody, you know, yet say that I couldn't, except for the times when it's like an NDA type of a situation where they don't even want anybody to know
Mhm.
that they've hired anybody to do the work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so just specify that the work products belong to the client, except for being able to use them in my portfolio as an example.
Mm-hmm.
And then what you said about collaboration, I think is really super important. And one of the best experiences I've had where a collaboration that was just kind of a fun brainstorm actually turned out to be, you know, a good lucrative thing was when I decided with somebody that she could make a one-time payment to me for what we had developed together, and then she had the rights to like use that, and I wouldn't try to make any. It was a game that we made together,
Mm-hmm.
and the plans for a game, and then if she took it and ran with it and made it, like I would never try to make anything competitive with it. You know, I was
Yeah.
just happy for it to be in the world. So
Mhm.
needed somebody to bounce ideas off of and kind of get it like proof of concept level. And I didn't know where it was going to go. And then I was like, well, do I want to like get a percentage of this, or, you know, how do I want to get something out of it? And I just said, you know what, just like a one time, you know, it was probably, you know, it made it feel like I was getting paid to like have fun and brainstorm with somebody, but it
Yeah,
was a nice experience. Yeah.
Mhm. That's great. So I will say another thing on the NDAs and from the client facing perspective on why
Open
it's
them now.
important.
Get back to my
And so one of the other things that I do professionally, it's called graphic recording. And this is something that I'm going to be getting back into. I've done it with clients like Citibank and Salesforce, for example. And graphic recording is basically, the artist sits in a meeting and you're doing visual note taking and basically making like a live infographic. And I've signed many NDAs for, doing graphic recording, because if you're in an internal meeting and, the client, the company you're working for is, talking about things they wouldn't want to be in the public or might not want to unveil right away, like inner workings of the company or, certain practices, you want to make sure that, you're not putting something like that out. Like I've got like tons of graphic recordings that I've done that I'm not able to share on social media or through my website or portfolio, because it's just the way it is. I signed the NDA for it. I was paid for it, and like I look at them and it's like they're really great. I like the work that I've done, but it's just that kind of sacrifice. Like you're getting paid to do a job. It's internal. They don't want certain information getting out. So like I'm taking these notes that best capture the meeting with keeping in mind, okay, this is not something I'm going to be able to share on social media or, on my website. So to kind of like combat that, what Eleanor was saying with samples, I find like graphic recording meetings I can do, or clients that I can work with where, the information can be public and they don't mind me, sharing, the illustrated board that I come up with, just so I can kind of still put out there like, hey, I do graphic recording. This is what it could look like. And then also having, the work where I sign the NDAs for, because like you want to make sure you can have something in your portfolio that says you can do the work. It's one thing to approach a client and say like, hey, like I do graphic recording or I do editorial illustration, and not having anything to back it up. Like if all your work, like you've signed NDAs for, like what are you going to be able to show professionally? So like even if you are just creating some work for yourself that shows the client, hey, I can do this style, and keeping that in your back pocket so you can like showcase it, it's just a good thing to consider.
I want to welcome our Aaron. If you wanted to say hi, or if you have any questions, Aaron, I'm glad you were able to jump in. You might not be in a space to be able to talk or whatnot, but anyway, feel free to be part of the conversation. All right. Thanks, Raheem.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so I think I mentioned this already, but correspondence, definitely just to reiterate, CC yourself on emails, business transactions, also invoicing. Definitely CC yourself on invoicing. Keep a record of all of that stuff. You don't want to get into a situation where you've been paid for something and you don't have a record of it, especially for tax time. Especially if it's like over a certain amount, like if you're getting paid like thousands of dollars for a piece of illustration or a piece of art, you want to make sure you just keep all your records, just in case, like you never know. And, the client might want to reference it like, hey, like we paid you for this job and, we want revisions on it. And then, that might be a separate invoice. So just, keeping yourself safe, keeping yourself on track, and building that, solid relationship with the client. Because if you want them to come back to you, they would want to make sure that you're able to keep track of the records. And it's not like this thing where you have to like dig through a ton of emails to find the transaction record and things like that. So just to, best practices and to stay on track with all that, because it is a business. If you're getting paid for your art, you should be doing it, or even hiring somebody else to keep records of that. Any questions on that? All good? Okay.
Really good point.
Okay, So the next point I kind of talked about a bit, and I'll kind of expand on it a bit more. So this point I like to call upward momentum, recognizing when you're doing well for yourself, and adjusting your prices accordingly. And then also, like, I even have like a press page on my website. Like if I any press that I enjoy, I try to like keep a record of that. Like I just had a great article done on me from the Arts Council, the arts paper, from a high school student, and she was amazing. Like we kind of fought to get this piece out because she wasn't sure if she was going to be able to do it in the time frame and things like that. She's part of a certain program. So any press that you get, take stock of it, keep a record of it, and really just like post it up so that people can see the kind of work that you're doing. So I'll give examples. Like I just mentioned, arts paper thing. I had a few talks at Apple stores. So for one, I had one. I think I had like two in New York, and I had video recordings of that. It was put on YouTube and everything. So one of the first things I made sure that I did was like create a whole blog post about it and then put it out there. Like it's not just about creating artwork or photography or whatever your medium is. It's about saying like, hey, like these are the stories people are writing about me, and then like taking that, and then really that's like an art form in itself. And it's like just how you package it. So like you're either doing that as a creative person, or if you're working with collaborators, maybe you're hiring somebody to do that. But just kind of like thinking like art as story, like you're your own storyteller. You got to control your own narrative. I think that's really important. I spend a lot of time thinking about that. So whenever I get a piece of press like that, whether it's like doing a talk at Apple, and I've done some talks in California, Palo Alto, for instance, I used to do some talks with the Pacific Art League. I would not only promote it before I did the talk, but like even promote it after. Like here are the results of the talk. Like you can watch the talk here, and like Eleanor and I are doing that with these best practices exercises, these talks. We're kind of coining it the business side. Like the business side of the art field, and just kind of like packaging that where both of us can educate artists on the type of work that we do, and like, hey, like we didn't get this in our own educations, we kind of discovered this for ourselves. This is what we can share with everybody. So controlling your own narrative, looking at the points in your career like, hey, like this is a great piece of press, like let me not just share this but reshare it, like share it like right after it happens, maybe wait the following week, share it again. Hey, in case you missed it, I got this piece of press in the New Haven Register. And then just like go for it, like be your own champion. At the same time, like kind of balance it so you're not overwhelming people with the press and the success and the stuff that you're getting. But like give them just enough so that they want more.
I love that. I love that. I have a question.
Sure.
Just writing it down. So do you ever have like a business or group or someone that you want to create something for, and you ask them like, hey, I like what you're doing, I want to collaborate with you or work with you or create something for you? And if so, how can you charge them for that when you're the one that came to them? They didn't ask for you. You asked for them.
Oh, that's a good one too. Okay, I like that. Okay, so I've got an example. Okay, I've got a good example for that. There's a brand that I really enjoy. They're called the Tie Bar, and they are a menswear company based in Chicago. And what I did to get their business, it started with me doing some, I guess you could call it free work. Like I did some work, and I did it because I was passionate about it, and I did it because I knew I'll be able to put in my portfolio. What I did was kind of create like a lookbook for some of their items, their menswear items. And I said like, okay, this is what you can wear from Tie Bar in the spring. Like this is what I'm personally wearing, and so I'm going to use their items. So like I put that out on Twitter. I tag them. I probably tagging them like every day for like maybe like 2-3 weeks. And then they reached out to me asking if I actually wanted to do a lookbook for them and, generating business. So I did the work because I knew I would be able to make it part of my portfolio. I did that free. And then they approached me about business. And then I said, okay, if you want this, this is how much I'm charging. It turned like this big campaign, which was great. So how I'd probably do that now, like if I was to message a company or something, I'd say I'd look and see, okay, how would they be able to use my art? Is there a need for it? And can I fulfill that need? And then I might send them a direct message, through Twitter or Instagram, saying if they could use illustrations for their office space, or maybe they could use portrait illustrations of their employees of the month or something. And then if I can really pick up on that need that they have, then you can talk price and saying how much you charge. So it's like a way of like being proactive in getting their business and saying like, hey, I'm a professional, I'm approaching you about this. And at the same time, this is how much I would charge. Is this in your budget? And, leaving it at their doorstep.
Okay, cool. I kind of did that before, done a little free work just to say like, hey, this is what I can do.
Mhm.
And like, if you like what I'm doing, then I can do more of it.
Yeah,
Cool.
exactly.
I have another question, but do you have anything to say about that, Eleanor, before I move on?
We can always chat later. So get your questions out.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So when you have your press or what people are saying about you, do you specifically ask a client for testimony and if you have permission to share that testimony, or if they just send you a message saying, hey, I really like this, like, thank you so much, I loved it, blah, 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 and you can use that as a testimony? Or does it have to be like official? This is a testimony that I'm putting out as a testimony.
Oh, that's a good question. It doesn't necessarily have to be official. Like if they give you a piece of great feedback, I'd say just use that great feedback. Definitely always ask permission. You don't want to, put out something that you think is a great testimony and they're like, hey, like that was a kind of private conversation. Got to ask first. So just kind of avoiding getting into a situation like where you're sharing something with your followers and you think it's great, and then they ask you to take it down, which is no fun. So definitely ask permission first. And, just having like a testimonials page is great. That's actually something that I'm building for myself, especially with the Arts and Ideas gig that I just got. That's something I want to just keep promoting. And if you have people on your side, singing your praises, like it just looks great. But yeah, absolutely ask permission first.
Okay, makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, because sometimes I see testimonial pages and it'll just be a quote and then like a person's name underneath. So it seems just kind of like, I don't know, like you could have just made that up. So I'm always curious about the validity, and like, I guess is maybe an honor system. Like this is a real testimony.
Right.
I guess that's it.
Well, the places that you can't fake it are the LinkedIn recommendations. You can ask people on LinkedIn to make those. And then, of course, if you have a dedicated Facebook page or social media page for your business that's not mixed with your personal, you can get people to post stuff there.
Yeah, like
reviews
reviews
and whatnot.
stuff. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, that's all I have for now.
Very cool. Okay. And my last point is definitely a creative person taking time to not only decompress, creating that work-life balance, but also taking stock of your accomplishments and not having this feeling like you have to be on all the time. That's something that, I still am working on. Sometimes I just want to work. But I find the best times, where I'm getting like super inspired are also when I'm remembering to take care of myself, whether that's like working out, eating well, playing some video games or something, going on Flipboard to like read some news articles, taking that time to be away from your work so you can come back to it, stronger and, refreshed and energized. So that's super important.
Along those lines, it's fun to have a pick me up file where I stick like nice cards or things that have come through that are like, proof of effort.
Yeah.
Having a bad day, you can kind of pull out the file and flip through it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, again, that's going to be its own talk too, because we all go through some form of artist block, writer's block, whatever you want to call it. It's like, I struggle. I think there was like 1 year in high school or something, like I really struggled with that. Like I wasn't creating anything for months on end. And I had to find ways of getting out of that. And, like you got to hold yourself accountable. You got to give yourself the space and the time to like come out of that hole, whatever you're in. And for me, I think Pinterest is really good. Flipboard is really good too. Like just kind of like going through stories, looking at what other artists are doing. Instagram can be good. Like here and there, it can be good. I'd say like, if you're going to use Instagram to get inspired, it's good to like just use that search tab and like put in what your interests are instead of just like doom scrolling, but just kind of like making a list like, hey, like these are action steps I can take when I'm not inspired. Even if it's like going for a walk, going downtown, going to the park, you never know what's going to inspire you. But yeah, those would be my tips.
That is such a gold mine and hard one. Is there anything that you would like, what's the pep talk you would give yourself, your previous self when you were getting into this? Do you have any kind of like
That's good. Yeah.
sum ups?
Yeah. The sum up would be take care of yourself, be kind to yourself. You're doing great. You are only in competition with yourself. That's one thing I've always been mindful of. Like it's great to be inspired by other artists, other creative people. You don't want to get into the headspace where you are tearing yourself down because an artist is in a place that you want to be. I mean, I myself, I'm not a full-time creative yet. And I say yet because I'm going to be. And I know a lot of people that are. And I don't look at those people like I'm envious of them. Like I want to be in that space and I know I'm going to get there. So like how I look at it is like, okay, how do I learn from them where I can set myself up in a way where I can have that too? Because like a lot of people that I meet kind of assume that I'm doing this full time and I'm making the revenue, I'm making things happen. And I'm trying to like, not trying to, I am doing that in a safe way. I'm married now and it just wouldn't make sense to like leave my job to, without like having some sense of security. So a friend of mine, his name is Kyle Lambert, and we've had like tons of conversations on being a full-time entrepreneur. And he is one now. He's like doing all these illustrations for Hollywood. He said, you can be a full-time entrepreneur, safely if you have like, say 6 months to a year of income just stashed away and saved. So that's like the mindset that I have when I'm charging my clients, when I'm bringing in new business, like, okay, how's this going to help so I can pay all my bills, be secure, and be able to have fun too. Until I get to that point, like I'm not making that leap because it doesn't make sense.
On the flip side, Zalika, is there anything you'd like to tell your future self?
That's a funny question. I'd like to tell my future self that everything I'm doing now has purpose and where I'm at is where I'm supposed to be, and keep going. Even when I feel discouraged, just keep going because I love what I'm doing and people will see that and want that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yes.
Hmm.
Just don't give up. That's the main thing. Don't give up.
Right. Don't give up.
Yeah.
Because a lot is just about staying in the game, peel off and, go and do other things because things don't happen in whatever time frame they'd expected it or whatever. So there's a lot to be said for staying in the game.
Exactly.
I really am in it, like it makes it more real to me for you, Raheem, to say that you have kind of been doing this for like more than 10 years.
Mhm.
So I'm like, okay, I've been drawing since I was a kid, like, of course, but I've only really been focused on taking myself seriously as an artist for like a year.
Mm.
So I'm like a baby in this thing right now. And but at the same time, I've made more money from my art in the last year than my whole life combined. So
Mhm.
I'm still, this is the beginning, but I'm still here and I'm in it. And I just see that, like you telling me this, it's been this many years. And there's a bunch of YouTube artists that I know that have been making videos for 10 years. And I
Yeah.
go back and see their original, their videos 10 years ago, and they're not that great. but they kept up. They kept doing it. They
Yeah,
kept
yeah, yeah,
practicing.
yeah.
Um,
Put in those
so
hours.
yeah, and I feel like I'm gonna be alive all this time. Like that's my plan. I'm gonna be alive for the next 10, 20 so years.
Yeah.
So I know that I have to be doing something I love rather
Mhm.
than going to a job just to make money. That just
Absolutely.
I can't live like that. So I
Right.
don't care like what I'm going through to accomplish these artistic goals. It's worth the journey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So all of that is for my future self.
Thank you. Thank
That
you.
is
you.
great. That's really great. And just hearing that, makes me very thankful that, Eleanor and I are partnering on doing these talks. Like just so much information I want to be able to share, with creatives and, just really start a dialogue and start a community about, sharing information. So important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you being here, and I appreciate you, Eleanor, for making the space for this. Uh, I feel like this is my own personal masterclass, and I'm so grateful.
Yes.
I'm so grateful. I almost didn't make it too, but
Oh, man, that's
universe
amazing.
made a way for us.
Thanks for making it work.
Whoever shows up are the right people, man. So
Yeah,
that was it.
definitely. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well,
No
thanks
problem.
to all of you. And we will extract more value from this recording and get that out there. And yeah, so until next time, Arts West CT is going to sign off with you beautiful people and keep being awesome.
Absolutely. You as well.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.